Your roads have potholes, there's traffic, there's difficulties getting from point A to point B, congestion. And now, the solutions that people put forth are constrained by money and resources, and the infrastructure is just deteriorating. Does that sound familiar? I mean, that sounds like every American city that there is. Poor planning, lack of maintenance, all of that. That, my friends, is your body. That's your body. We live in a world made and kind of built by what's going on in our head. These universal concepts and principles were not like something we just came up with out of the blue. Like the thing that creates an organism also creates is what creates an organization, right? Like it's a way of organizing things. The only organization fully capable of withstanding and reproducing is organic organization, right? We've got trees, we've got our bodies, we reproduce after so long. We live only a certain amount of time, right? So, like when we build a building, or when we used to build buildings, right? Before we started taking cheap ways, cheap shortcuts, because of capitalism, cheap shortcuts to get what we want. We used to build buildings that lasted. They used to be like, get this because it lasts. We used to build cars that lasted. Nowadays, in this day and age, we're not building things to last. We're building things just to make a quick buck. And that's how it is when it comes to the way in which we treat our bodies. We've moved into this realm. They talk about this as far as like your time horizon for like investing or whatever the case is. Like people nowadays are about this living now. You only live once. You live now. So, do it up, live it up, all that sort of stuff. And so we don't operate from a position of building something to last. We operate from the position of building something for right now. And so that kind of seeps into the way in which we treat our bodies and the way in which we nourish our bodies, the way in which we think of health. Now, I've lived in multiple cities over the years, and in each city, there's always been something different about it. There's pros and cons to the places you live. There are certain places that are very thoughtful about the way in which they do things. There are certain places that are seem to be just patching and sticking things together and just haphazardly, overlaying different things. Having lived and traveled in different cities, you see these outcomes. You see how these things kind of present themselves. I've lived in Korea, for example, and if you look at, the way a city like Seoul is laid out, you can see the ways in which the roads, the wide roads, you can see the public transit. There's public transit to get you into every single aspect and element of that city fast. You can get on the train and get to where you need to get. When you think about that city, for example, it was built a little bit more recently because of wars and things like that, and it was built and developed a little bit more recently. So they had an idea of what they wanted to do based on what's been seen already around the world, right? So how these other cities had already been built, and maybe like moving into the modern era, you can kind of look to others' mistakes and be like, okay, this is what we need to do differently than what was done there. I lived in Bangkok, and in Bangkok, anybody who's been to Bangkok knows it's chaotic there, right? And there are dead end streets. There are streets that, only move off of one main vein street. Um, they're called sois. But it's it's set up in such a way, and this is not to disparage Thailand or the people of Thailand, but it's set up in such a way that it's very, very difficult to navigate. It's hard to get places. Traffic is really difficult. And I've heard from people who lived there years ago, or people who traveled there many decades ago, that the traffic was even worse than it is now. And that it's so much better because of some of the things that have been implemented over time to alleviate that. And that's also an important thing, is to know that you have a problem, right? We talk about this in fitness and training. The first step is to know that you have a problem or a blockage or an issue, and then to work to remedy that problem through, solutions. And these solutions, the solutions that Thailand, came up with, or that Bangkok came up with, in order to alleviate some of the things that they're experiencing, took many years of investment. It took time and energy and effort. They had to really pour resources into that. And that's the same thing I say about your body. Like, it's not going to just happen overnight. You've been a certain way, you've had a certain infrastructure that you're working with for your entire life. And whether you've played sports, whether you've been inactive, whatever the thing is, you've created a base from those things. Whether you've been injured, all those things have a cumulative effect to what your infrastructure, your personal body infrastructure is like. And so if you're trying to change that, you're going to have to put in time, energy, and effort. Now, I say that to move on to Singapore. And I spent a lot of time in Singapore. And when I tell you, that place moves with the efficiency, with a type of efficiency that I like. I actually, I saw a lady who recently gave up her British citizenship, and she um, became a citizen of Singapore. And they asked her why she gave up her citizenship, to the UK, or for British citizenship, in order to, become Singaporean. And she said, because efficiency. And I was like, yo, like, the lack of, like, debilitating bureaucracy, the ability to know that your bus is going to be there at a specific time and is going to get you to the destination at that specific time. Like the efficiency at which the structure and the systems have been put in place in order to make sure that things run smoothly is, I don't know if there's another place on the planet. And other people have been other places. You might know of some places that, but I haven't been to those places. So I don't know if there's another place on the planet that operates in this way. So, the efficiency of getting things done, the efficiency of being able to move and get from A to B is huge. And so that when you think about, like, if you were to say these were different types of athletes or different types of human bodies or organisms, you would say that Singapore has a lot of flexibility and range of motion, right? It has the ability to move efficiently, you have the ability to get where you need to go and do the things you want to do, without obstruction. In some of the other places that I mentioned, you might have limitations. And if you think about our American cities, in my city, there are potholes, there are, constant, you know, uh, things being constructed, but with very little thought as far as, like, how can we make detours in the moment. There are, so many infrastructure issues that then affect every single aspect. Like, the wear and tear on your car is affected because of the potholes and the divots and the things that are going on, the debris that's on the road. Like, all of these things, you know, reduce efficiency, reduce your ability to move, right? Because somebody hits a nail that's in the road, pops a tire, now they're blocking the road. Somebody hits that pothole that's there, and jacks up their axle, now their car is sitting in the middle of the road obstructing traffic, right? The positives of the way a city like San Francisco is laid out, for example, is that you have multiple different routes to get to different places because of the layout in blocks, where if you miss a street here, you can go to the next street, go around the block, and come back. Those sorts of things are great. But if you're trying to get across the city, forget about it. There's only like 2 to 3 options with regards to trying to get from one side of the city to the other side of the city. If you're coming from the north, if you're coming from the southwest to the northeast part of the city, there's 3 directions you can go, and each direction is going to have a different type of traffic or a different blockage or a different issue we're trying to get there. And this is a 7 mile by 7 mile city, but it will take you 30 plus minutes to get to the other side of the city. And that is crazy. So I say all this to say, when we're thinking about training our body and we're thinking about what we're trying to do, we are trying to work on an infrastructure project. Our body is an infrastructure project. We are built on the same principles, or I should say, our cities and our buildings and our organizations are all built on the same concepts and ideas that we know. We only build based on what we know. And our body is built in such a way that we need to create a strong base so that we can build a high ceiling, right? If you don't have a strong wide base of ability, of range, of movement, of whatever it is, then your ability to peak or to do peak level things is going to be constrained, right? If you don't have a certain range of motion, then you're not going to be able to do specific things. If you don't work on your lung capacity or your cardiovascular capacity, so your zone 2, your base, your aerobic base, if you don't work on your aerobic base, then your ability to achieve maximal efforts with good recovery is going to be constrained, right? So we have to work on building broad base and also building depth or height in this case. We can think of it as depth, right? Like more depth of range as well as breadth of range. So our breadth is our aerobic base, and then our depth or our height is, our high intensity activity. We build high intensity activity on a broad base of cardiovascular capacity. Same thing with our tissues. We need a broad base of capacity to build the strength upon. And if you think about like how most of us are operating, most of us are unwilling to take the time to completely deconstruct all the layers of things, of issues, of scar tissue, of injury, of ways in which we've moved in the past that contribute to our ailments and issues. We're unwilling to take the moment in time to stop, take a pause, be like, you know what? Nobody can go down this street for, 6 months while we get this thing together. Nobody does that until they're completely injured, until they find themselves in physical therapy with a torn ACL or a torn rotator cuff or lower back went out or whatever the case is. Nobody's willing to say, hey, I got some issues, a little thing going on in my shoulder. You know what? I probably need to take a step back from benching. Oh, it bothers me when I'm bench pressing. Oh, I'm gonna keep going. Everybody just keeps going. That's the same as like what we're doing here in our society. We are literally just continuing to drive over these potholes, continuing to go these same directions, continuing to do these things over and over again until we're injured, until our car gets a flat in that pothole, until we get into an accident because we swerved around the pothole and ran into somebody else. Like all of these things are symptoms of deeper infrastructure issues that we refuse to face. And so I'm here to tell you, with your body, take the time, extend your horizon, think about how you want to be living at 70, at 80 years old. Not everybody's going to make it to 70, 80. That's the reality. But we want to invest. We want to invest with this long horizon, with this long, idea of like a future that's going to be somewhere over there, you know? And I think that when we only think about today, when we only think about the aesthetic, we leave a lot on the table, and we sacrifice a potential future for the here and now and everything, and trying to get everything now. And sometimes we need to find a little balance of that, you know, enjoyment, enjoying what we have, enjoying what we do, but also thinking about being able to enjoy those later years, right? If we don't invest now, we won't have it then. And so we gotta spend time and energy and effort in that. If you like this video, be sure to hit the like, share it with somebody who needs to hear this message, and thanks for watching. Make sure you subscribe to my channel. All right, thank you for watching. Peace.